I recently watched a YouTube video that told about one of the most heartless murders I've ever heard of. The victims were an elderly couple already suffering with health issues. The murderer, or one of the murderers, I should say, was someone they had taken into their home and treated like one of their own daughters.
Mystery, murder, red magic, heroes, and Alice.
Good morning and welcome to episode 24 of Mystery, Murder, and Magic. I'm Andrea. Alex isn't with us today. When I got ready to record, he decided he was going to have lunch with his sister, and I'm not even mad because I do like for my kids to do stuff together. Carol and Reggie Sumner, they had been high school sweethearts while they were teenagers in South Carolina, but soon after graduation, the couple parted ways, each with different goals in life that they found wouldn't make the relationship continue. Reggie joined the Navy, got married, and after departing from the Navy, became a railroad worker. Carol also got married twice, became a mom, and endured an abusive second marriage that nearly took her life. Her second husband shot her several times at their Charleston area home and then turned the gun on himself. After recuperating from that, Carol quickly went back to work to support her young family. She worked more than 25 years as a civil servant at the Citadel and the Charleston Air Force Base. She also worked nights at a nearby department store to help make ends meet. In the year 2000, Carol was working a customer service job for a local cable company. I can't talk today, so I'm sorry, y'all. But anyway, she's working this customer service job for a local cable company, and she receives this phone call that would change her life. The caller on the other end of the phone line said that his name was Reggie Sumner. Now, Carol probably thought that it was just someone with the same name as her, a high school sweetheart, you know. It was probably just a big coincidence, but she decided to ask anyway and was ecstatic to find out that it was the Reggie Sumner that she had been in love with when she was a teenage girl. They met for dinner and the romance was rekindled, and the couple tied the knot in the year 2001. Now, I wish I could say they lived happily ever after, but sadly they wouldn't. Now, during this time, Carol was fighting cancer. She had liver cancer. And on top of that, she had hepatitis C, fibromyalgia, and diabetes. Reggie's health wasn't much better. He was also a diabetic, and he had become frail over the years. Reggie had bought a home in Jacksonville back when he was working for CSX, and because he thought he'd be more comfortable there, the couple moved from their home in South Carolina to his house in Florida in 2005. While they were still living in South Carolina, they had taken a neighborhood girl named Tiffany Cole under their wings and treated her like one of their own kids. Their hearts really went out to young Tiffany because she didn't come from the healthiest or happiest of homes. And just before moving to Florida, the Sumners sold Tiffany a car, and they sold it for way below what the car was worth, and she promised to make payments on it. And Tiffany, she would even drive to their home in Florida to make the payments. Now, Carol's daughter Rhonda remained in South Carolina after her mom and stepdad moved away. She would call and chat with her mom every day. On July the 5th of 2005, though, she called her mom for their daily chat, but no one answered the phone. Well, she didn't think much of it that first day. Well, 2 days passed, and there's still no answer, and Carol wasn't returning her calls. So the next day, Rhonda decided just to jump in her car and drive the 4 hours to Jacksonville and check on them herself. Now, when Rhonda entered the home, she almost immediately knew that something was not right. For one thing, their beloved dog, Mikey, was there at the house, and she knew they would never have left him at home alone for such a long period of time. On the dining room table, there were plates with food still on them, like they had just left in the middle of eating dinner. And there was still food in pots on the stove. And she just knew that wasn't right at all because Carol kept a very neat and tidy home. Now, their car hadn't been in the garage either when she arrived. So, she's going through the house noticing, all these things aren't right. And she spots her mom's cell phone and this planner that she always had with her. They were both laying on the kitchen counter along with both her and Reggie's medicines. And there was just a lot that raised serious red flags to Rhonda, and she immediately got the local authorities involved. Well, in the course of the investigation, a detective called the Sumner's bank and found out there had been an alarming amount of ATM transactions, totaling thousands of dollars that had been withdrawn over the previous several days, starting on July the 9th. Now, when the detective obtained the security videos from the ATMs that they had used, he saw that it was this young adult male who made the withdrawals, and it wasn't Reggie Sumner. Now, in an effort to help the investigation along, the detective requested that they didn't close the bank account. They wanted to leave it open just to, try and get more evidence, I guess you could say, against, or find out what was going on with Reggie and Carol. On July the 12th, an off-duty Jacksonville Sheriff's deputy found the Sumners' missing Lincoln Town car abandoned in a wooded area in Baker County at the end of a dirt road. The deputy called for the investigator in charge of the investigation. The windows had been left open in the car, and in the floorboard they found sand. There were pieces of duct tape in the floorboard, on the back seat, and in the trunk, and there were 4 shovels in the trunk. On the ground they found a $5 bill stuck to a piece of duct tape. That very same day, the sheriff's office received a call from a man claiming to be Reggie and a woman claiming to be Carol. But the officers knew these voices sounded way too young to really be Reggie and Carol. It was just no way this was them. Now, the caller said that they were in Delaware for a funeral, and a friend had told them that their car was missing and that their house had been burglarized. They even gave the name of the town in Delaware that they were in and the airport that they had flown out of. But after a little snooping around, the investigator found that this was a town that didn't even exist, and the airport they had mentioned only handled cargo, not human passengers. The telephone call itself was traced and found to be coming from a cell phone belonging to a guy by the name of David Jackson in Charleston, South Carolina. Now, after checking that cell phone's records, they found several calls that were placed in Jacksonville, and one of those calls were to a car rental business. Investigators talked with people at the car rental place and found that a car had been seen sorry about that, let me back up. The car that had been seen in the background of the ATM security videos had been rented to Tiffany Cole. The car happened to be outfitted with a GPS device that could track where the car had been. Now, it didn't work in real time, so it was kind of like information was coming in behind, a little bit. So, on July the 8th, it showed that the car had been in Jacksonville near the Sumner's house. And it also placed the vehicle at one of the ATMs that had been used with the Sumner's debit card. A friend/neighbor further placed the car at the Sumner's because she said she had seen it parked at the Sumner's house several times after July the 4th, including around 11:30 p.m. on July the 8th. But unfortunately, she never saw anyone that was connected with the car. She only saw the car. Now, back in Charleston, local authorities located Tiffany Cole, Alan Wade, and a guy by the name of Michael Jackson, but it's not the Michael Jackson. And they were all at a motel. The three they rented 2 rooms in Tiffany's name. After executing a search warrant of the motel room and Tiffany's car, the one that she was buying from the Sumners, police found several items that belonged to the Sumners. Investigator Meacham from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Department traveled to Charleston to question Tiffany. During that interview, Tiffany opened up about the crime and even admitted it was her who had talked to him, saying that she was Carol Sumner. But she also said that she had been told what to say. Tiffany insisted that she did not know everything about the crime because she didn't want to know, because, she knew the Sumners so well. She said that she knew that Wade and Jackson had went to the Sumners' home, stolen the credit cards and other property while she had stayed back at a motel. As the interrogation went on, Tiffany insisted again that she didn't know anything about what had happened, but she did know that the couple had been tied up with duct tape. She also admitted driving 3 people to the Sumners' house and then came back to pick them up after the crime was committed. This was the first time that Meacham had heard of a 4th person being involved. Tiffany said she didn't know this 4th person's last name, but she did know that his name was Bruce and that he lived in McClenny, Florida. When she picked them back up, Cole was the only one who rode with her because the other 2 were driving the Sumners' Lincoln Town car. While they were driving, Tiffany said that she overheard Cole, who was talking to the others on a cell phone, and that's when she learned that the Sumners were in the trunk of their car. She went on to say that when they got to a certain point on the dirt road, she was instructed to stay there while the rest took the Lincoln further down the road, and insisting that she didn't know anything happened. She just kept insisting she didn't know anything about what had happened to the Sumners. After about an hour, the 4 left in the rental car that Tiffany was driving. The person named Bruce that Tiffany had mentioned turned out to be Bruce Nixon. When he was arrested, he led investigators to the exact location of where the Sumners had been buried. During the autopsies, the medical examiner found dirt in the Sumners' mouth, throat, trachea, and esophagus. And because of this, the medical examiner determined that the Sumners had been buried alive. The medical examiner determined that the official cause of death was homicide by mechanical asphyxia and smothering for both Carol and Reggie. When the case went to trial, Bruce Nixon testified for the state and admitted that he had taken part in the murder in July of 2005. He also named Alan Wade, Michael Jackson, and Tiffany Cole as the other participants. In his testimony, Nixon said that his friend Alan Wade asked if he'd like to help someone. Wade came to Nixon's house in the rental car, and as they drove, Wade mentioned getting money by robbing someone. At another time, Wade told Jackson that he would pay him if he'd help them dig a hole. He agreed, and after acquiring 4 shovels, Wade, Jackson, and Cole picked him up in the rental car. They drove to the road that Tiffany had mentioned during her interrogation, and when they found an ideal spot, the 3 men dug the hole while Tiffany held the flashlight. Nixon said that he knew that the hole that they dug was for the robbery, but he didn't know exactly how the hole was to be used. The day after they dug the hole, Nixon learned that they would steal money from the Sumners' bank account, and the robbery would include the Sumners' death. He further said that all 4 of them, including Tiffany, discussed robbing and murdering Reggie and Carol. Now, in my opinion, that sounds like a more believable explanation than the innocent picture that Tiffany had tried to paint of herself during her interrogation. Now, before the actual murders, they discussed different ways of killing the Sumners, including injecting them with a lethal amount of medicine. The day before the crime actually took place, they discussed whether they would go in on the Sumners while they were home or wait for them to return to the house, because Tiffany knew from a phone conversation she had had with the Sumners that they had doctor's appointments. And they finally decided that Nixon and Wade would enter the house while Jackson and Cole waited outside for them to bound the Sumners with the duct tape. When Nixon and Wade entered the home, Nixon pulled a realistic-looking gun on the Sumners and then they quickly began wrapping them with the duct tape, including their eyes, so that they couldn't see Jackson would be looking for their bank records. And other than that, there were no plans or what to actually do once they were inside the home. Once Jackson entered the home, he started directing the others on what to do next. Around 10 o'clock the night of the robbery and murder, Wade and Nixon knocked on the door of the Sumners' home and said that they needed to use the phone because their car had broken down. Now, Carol was a little skeptical, but she was such a big-hearted person that she let them in. Once inside, Wade grabbed Reggie while Nixon held a toy gun on him. But it was a realistic toy gun. They didn't know that it was not a real gun. The Sumners begged to not be hurt, and the two men promised not to hurt them. Next, they bound the Sumners with the duct tape. They covered their eyes, and then they led them to a bedroom. While Nixon stayed in the bedroom with the Sumners, Jackson entered the home, and he and Wade searched the home for property, credit cards, and bank information. After they got what they wanted, they put the Sumners in the trunk of their Lincoln that was parked out in the garage. Now, Wade and Nixon left in the Lincoln, while Jackson and Tiffany Cole followed behind in the rental car. They even stopped to put gas in the Lincoln before driving on to the place on the dirt road that they had dug the hole. Once they reached the location of the hole, Nixon did say that Tiffany stayed back in the rental car while they opened the trunk. After opening the trunk, Jackson became angry when he saw that some of the duct tape had came off of the Sumners. He said that he didn't want to see their eyes while he was killing them. Once they were at the hole, Jackson told Nixon to go back to the rental car and keep an eye on Tiffany because he was afraid she would just get in the car and leave. Now, after about 30 to 45 minutes, Wade drove the Lincoln out of where they had pulled into and back onto the road where Cole and Nixon were waiting on them, and Jackson got back into the rental car with Tiffany. Next, they all drove to where the Lincoln had been found abandoned, then proceeded to wipe the car down and left the 4 shovels in the trunk. After that, they all got into the rental car, hit an ATM for some cash, and drove to a hotel. Jackson, Wade, and Cole drove back to the Sumners' house where they stole it was a coin collection that Reggie had, a computer, and other items. The next day, Nixon left the others, taking $200 in prescription medicines, including pain pills. At a party the next day, he used the pills, and he also shared them with other people that were at the party. Now, he received a plea deal because he cooperated with the police, even though he lied to them at first, but then later showed the police where the Sumners was buried. Now, that plea included a sentence of 52 years to life in prison, and the actual sentence would be decided by the judge. Through the trial, Tiffany's defense attorney attempted to paint the same innocent picture of her that she had when she was being interrogated. He insisted that Tiffany had no knowledge of what was taking place and that she hadn't participated other than driving the rental car and paying for what they bought before the murders with bad checks that she was writing from her overdrawn account. The attorney further said that Tiffany never even saw the Sumners that night. When Tiffany was on the witness stand, she said that she felt bad about what had happened to the Sumners and wished that she could have stopped it. She went on to say that she didn't knowingly participate in a plan to kidnap, rob, and murder Reggie and Carol. When all was said and done, the jury only took 90 minutes to deliberate, and on October 19, 2007, Tiffany Cole was sentenced to death for each murder, life imprisonment for each kidnapping charge, and 15 years for the robbery. Wade and Jackson were both sentenced to 2 death sentences, and Nixon was sentenced to 45 years after pleading guilty to second-degree murder. In 2010, the Florida Supreme Court unanimously affirmed Tiffany's conviction after an appeal was filed on her behalf. Her lawyer had argued that her life should be spared because she had no idea that the other 3 defendants were going to kill the Sumners by burying them alive. While in the high court, they did agree though that she didn't know that it was going to be such a heinous method, but there was so many other factors in the case that justified the death penalty for Tiffany. And in just my opinion, there's no way she didn't know what they had planned. I think she's really just trying to pin it on the other 3 people. Now, the 3 sentenced to death, they still sit on Florida's death row right now, awaiting to be executed. And I haven't found a date for when the executions are supposed to take place. If I find anything, I will update on a future episode. But this whole case to me was just really sad. I mean, the Sumners had taken Tiffany in like one of their own kids and, helped her with a car and probably fed her and gave her a place to sleep if she needed it. And then this is what she turned around and did. I just don't understand people. There's just no excuse. And to bury that sweet couple alive like they did is just beyond anything that I can fathom. I can't imagine having like a cruel enough bone in my body to do something like that. I don't know. It's just unbelievable. The meanness that is in like a lot of people's hearts. But anyway, this was something that I hadn't heard of until I watched that YouTube video that I mentioned at the beginning of the episode. But anyway, that's really all I have on that today. But like I said, if I hear, of anything else, like an execution date or any for these people, I'll update you guys on like a future episode. But I want to thank y'all for listening in. Don't forget to tune in on Wednesday for the Midweek Mini and on Saturday for the Weekend Weird Files. Have a good rest of your week.